mind is okay. Off your mind, come over to the sound like me.
Chai! Now wow, people wey suppose talk through to power don't off mic. And if we talk, now 500,000 they go summer us, call them hate speech. But fear not, my ego don't come. Ingo torchlight every corner, nooks and cranny of all these bad people where they spoil our country. So my people make we loud, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. My people make we shout, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, man of the masses, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. My ego diary politico, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. This one not the off in mind, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. Can in the touchlight every corner, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. Okay, some people be they holla say they want the power. Chai, them be promise us say we go get light and power. Nah. Them hustle so they can't get the power. But now they know they do anything with the power. Every day, dollar just they get the higher power. Over naira, see them talk say make we off mind. But thank God say my ego don't come. So my people make you loud, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. My people make we shout, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, man of the masses, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. My ego diary politico, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. This one not they off in mind, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. Person where they do evil, no one make person talk. Them say that my yegun, that man too they talk. He too they talk. Say my yegun diary, he they hot like pepper. But every day then they take money in bulk. Poor man picking, they the street they hawk. Still them talk say make we no talk. But thank God say my yegun don't come. So my people make you loud, oh yo yo. My yegun don't come, oh yo yo. My people make you shout, oh yo yo. My yegun don't come, oh yo yo. Man of the masses, my ego don't come, oh yo yo. My ego diary politico, oh yo yo. My ego don't come, oh yo yo. This man not the off him.
Hello there.
Mayegun la wa mo la mo dododo. Mayegun diary.
Good morning to you, good afternoon to you, and good evening to you from wherever you are watching from. This is Mayegun Live.
Mayegun today, oh, ọ̀rẹ́ ara yìí. Mayegun diary. Lórí Facebook.
Thank you so much for joining me, and you are welcome to the Sunday sermon today.
Àṣírí ọ̀dẹ̀lú kì í bò níbẹ̀ o. Bó bá ṣe àní Máyégún máa wí.
Thank you so much for joining me. Share this broadcast. Invite your friends. Invite your not so friendly friends and tell them that Mayegun today.
Godfatherism. Mayegun diary.
If you have been following the news, if you have been following the developing news from Sudan, and you are from Nigeria, I think this broadcast is going to be for you. Share it. I'm also live on TikTok, by the way.
Lórí Facebook. Lórí YouTube. And yes, we like.
Sorry to my friends watching on Instagram. Sorry, for watching on TikTok. You are likely not going to be able to see some of the add-on content that will help further illustrate what I am actually showing to people on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter as we speak. But here is the context of what is going on in Sudan. But you want to know how this is also related to Nigeria? I will explain. Share this broadcast. Thank you, everyone from who is watching from all platforms today. Sunday sermon on Mayegun's Diary Politico is popularly known as a no-holds-barred session, a place where kind of easier for us to express ourselves exactly the way we feel. No sugarcoating, no niceties, and there is no political correctness. Also, the beauty of Sunday sermon on Mayegun's Diary Politico is that it is always very, very honest and factual too. Something that is irrefutably, it's impossible to refute, kind of. Anyway, you have heard about Sudan, haven't you? Khartoum, Sudan, South Sudan, and all that. Okay. Sudan is in Africa. Let's start with that. But if you are from Nigeria very well, are you familiar with that word, Janjaweed? Are you? Okay. Now, Janjaweed, in the days, even till today, are the Tuareg, mostly Tuareg, and some other Central, West Africa, and all those places who are actually operating, terrorists who are operating within the Sahel of Africa. So in Sudan, sometimes before 2015, a crisis started in Dafur, and this crisis is similar to what Nigeria is experiencing in the hands of Fulani terrorists and Boko Haram. The Janjaweed terrorists, they were killing, massacring, kidnapping, maiming, raping, burning properties in Sudan at the time. But before then, there was South Sudan. So Sudan is a big country. I think it's the biggest in Africa after Congo or before Congo. Anyway, so Sudan as a whole country was being governed by the northern part of Sudan. The power, in fact, was held by one single man for nearly 30 years, Omar Albashir. Now, Omar Albashir from northern part of Sudan, controlling power. So the crisis, the terrorism, the killings, the violence were so much prevalent in South Sudan because of their resources. What was that? Crude oil. Now, before then, just like Nigeria, the North and the South Sudan, the Southern Sudan got an autonomy when they were getting their independence from Egypt. South Sudan was given autonomy, which means they could rule themselves, until a coup took place, a northern coup that took over the whole country and cancelled the autonomous region or the authority of the South Sudan, and they brought the entire country together and they call it one Sudan. So the crisis then was mostly in South Sudan. Government-sponsored terrorists, government soldiers, military, killing civilians. It was mostly in South Sudan. The South Sudaners were also fighting back too. So fast forward to 1992, 1993. They reached another agreement when they were like, okay, let them have the autonomy. And this time around, for a process towards independence, cut it short, South Sudan broke away from the Northern Sudan. So Sudan remained, South Sudan left. When South Sudan left, the regular terrorists sponsored by the government of Sudan for years, decades, they now have themselves to fight. Now, this is where the story gets interesting. Like the Fulani terrorists in Nigeria and across West Africa, in this part of Sudan, the Janjaweed rules. But the Janjaweed came from the camel traders. Camel traders. In Nigeria, we have cow herders. So cow herders, who have the backing of very powerful people of their tribe, supposedly in power, gave them all of the leverage they needed. Like you are experiencing in Nigeria, so it is in Sudan. This Janjaweed happened to be terrorist-sponsored camel traders, camel rearers, or camel herders. From their group, they raised a Janjaweed terrorist group that have been terrorizing the rest of Africa for a while, by the way. But in Sudan, they were not leaving anyone at peace as well. But remember, South Sudan don't break away. They only have Sudan now. So having Sudan means, what are you going to do with the terrorists you have sponsored for decades? Somehow, Dafur happened. Dafur is in today's Sudan. Civilians were massacred. Guess who were behind that? The Janjaweed and the military. The military fighting the Janjaweed aiming at the civilians, and they are killing them in retaliation until they took over the vast resources of these areas. Gold. And you know, as they are saying it in Nigeria today, they are making Nigerians believe that the fight and the terrorism in Nigeria is about religion. No, the religion is just a cover. It's just a face. If you dig deep, the people supplying the weapons to the terrorists, the Westerners, who are giving the weapons to these terrorists, they have something else they are taking away from the place. Your resources. Now, you can be thinking they are fighting for Allah. Or you might be thinking, right, you are defending the religion. No, by defending them. No, you're not. So in Sudan, they have a leader, and his name is Hemedti. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Okay? Just like you have Alhaji Shekau in Nigeria. Then, Alhaji Shekau didn't succeed. But remember, he promised, he said that the Boko Haram flag will fly high at on the top of the asshole rock, Nigeria, and Islam will rule Nigeria. But that is just a facade. So in Sudan, this Hemedti, the leader of the Janjaweed terrorists, right? You remember, they were not just acting, they were being sponsored by those in government. They didn't emerge from anywhere, from nowhere. They are government-sponsored terrorists. This time around, there is no Southern Sudan to kill. There are no infidels to kill. So they have to divert it on themselves. So what happened? Omar Albashir started growing scared of the same military, the coup that brought him to power. He started getting scared of them. Now, it was time to integrate terrorists into government of Sudan by legitimizing them. Are you following? Omar al-Bashir gave amnesty to the Janjaweed. And he turned all the terrorists, he turned them to paramilitary. They call them paramilitary, just like your NDDC. No, not NDDC. That's Niger Delta Development Commission. NSCDC, the civil defense that you have in Nigeria that they recruited. It's like turning Boko Haram, Fulani terrorists, turning them to vigilantes or paramilitary that they can now put on uniforms, give them legal backing. Whatever they have done, all the atrocities, all the killings, we have to let go, because the people who were sponsoring them were the same people fighting them, making it look like they are fighting terrorists, but they are the same sponsoring them as well. So, you know something? Let's just legalize them so that they can't be seen as terrorists anymore. They will be seen, their leader will be called general, not a terrorist leader anymore. Do you get that? By this time, their leader was already in vast amount of wealth. He's gained access to almost the biggest of the biggest gold mines in the regions they've terrorized for decades. Yeah? Is now has access. Yeah, I mean, the guy have access to huge amount of money. He was so rich. The guy, the leader of the Janjaweed, he was so rich that they said he distributed $1 billion in a day by just calling groups. Yeah, you take this, you take that, you take this, you take. He was so rich. So he became the strongest ally of the president of Sudan, Omar Albashir. In fact, Omar Albashir, the president of Sudan, right, relaxed all the military guard that are protecting him. Every security protector, he relieved all of them. And he brought this Janjaweed that they have now legalized as paramilitary. He now promoted them as the people who are going to be protecting the president. And they protected him for years. Do you see that? In Nigeria, they are already telling Nigerians that the one day, if a repentant terrorist can be president of Nigeria. A repentant terrorist can run and become a governor. A repentant terrorist can become anything as long as they drop their weapons and all that. So Nigeria is not really far from that yet, with what we have witnessed in the last 7.5 years of APC in Nigeria. So what happened? In 2019, just before COVID, I think I should use their names. Sorry, I'm not so very conversant with the names of these generals, okay? But for the context, okay, let me read this out to you. You see, the leader of the Sudan military, the proper one, constitutional one, his name is Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Now, he is said to be the leader of the Sudanese Armed Forces. Now, Omar Albashir, the sponsor of terrorists, the Janjaweed, that he finally legalized before he got overthrown, they gave them a name. And their name is Paramilitary Rapid Response Force. Rapid Response Force, RRF or something like that, or RSF, Rapid Support Forces. That's the right word. And their leader is Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, is generally known as MDRIT or something, or MDRIT. Now that MDRIT, the president of Sudan then changed the name to something like a MDay or something like that, which is simply or loosely translated as my protector. So he made that MDIT guy of the Janjaweed force that they turned to paramilitary in Sudan, he made him his protector. Do you get that? So he became the most powerful man in Sudan after the president. In fact, he was like a de facto president. So this then now legalized all of the areas that he controls. So that then gave him, in the real political context, a political clout. He has military might, he has political might, He has wealth. He can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So this was their reality until 2019, when the uprising against Omar Albashir came to head. Now, when Omar Albashir was almost at the tail collapse, Hemedti and this guy, Abdel Fattah, they quickly banked on the people's rage and anger. They didn't want Al-Bashir anymore. So this would be a better time if they can work together and get rid of Omar al-Bashir, and they can share power between themselves. And that's exactly what happened. The military moved in. The paramilitary moved in. And they quelled they overthrew Omar al-Bashir, and they declared military or Supreme Military Transitional Council. Guess who was the head of that council? Abdel Fattah, the head of Sudanese Armed Forces. Guess who is his vice? Of course, you guessed right. Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, Hemedti. So this was the agreement. The terrorists came very close to power now. So whatever started like a ragtag hustling people, turning into terrorism that is the powerful people in the country began to sponsor. Now, this is them close to being in charge of the entire country. But it may tarry for a while. But eventually it's going to happen. Okay? So, while they were, from 2019, while they were like trying to say they want to transit to democratic government in Sudan, this guy has been building his connection. The connection that then took him, first, to Russia. He became a friend of Russia. This is a country, like you have a country, okay? And you have armed forces, supposedly a government that has armed forces. So every force should be under one command, Abi? But that is not what it is in Sudan. In Sudan, this rebel leader is allowed to keep and still continue to keep his own army. They have not been fully integrated and called the Sudanese soldiers or Sudanese military. He is independent, like somebody who is like, you have military in Nigeria military, okay? Then you have Miyetiala forces. So the Miyetiala, for example, right? They are not under Nigerian soldiers or military. They are just partners. And if Nigerian soldiers want to do anything, they can come to the territory where Miyetiala soldiers control. You get that? That's how Sudan exists in that context. But because they call them allies, it simply means they are friends, but territorially, everybody knows their boundary. So the intention was for Sudan to move forward. Since the former president already told them to legalize them, the ideal thing is to integrate them into the army. But how do you do that? When they actually have their own army, they have their way and access to their own weapons from different sources. Russia. Meanwhile, the Sudanese force, they have a deal with America. So this is now the clash of Russia interest versus American interest. So the ones who are actually the Sudanese force, the head of this real Sudanese army, so they want to swallow the Janjaweed army. So the Janjaweed army now said, if you try to swallow us, we go purge you. That was when the power play between them got escalated with the external interests, Russia and America. For those who remember the period of a Cold War and proxy war, 70s, read your history. When America is fighting either Russia anywhere, they will leave the theater of war And they will just start another proxy war elsewhere, mostly in Africa. I'm sorry, I'm not an historian that much, okay? But you know what is going on in Ukraine right now? Now, the Janjaweed, they have connection with Russia, who is giving them everything. This guy who had them have access to, like unlimited amount of gold that is trading with UAE, United Arab Emirates. So it's like a force on his own. Now it's now like, okay, if that is what you want, then we'll give it to you. Because the head of the armed forces said they are going to conduct an election in 2023. Okay? And conducting the election means the paramilitary will have to come under the military. There's no longer like, the same levels. Now they are killing themselves in Sudan. Guess who are those who are going to be supplying the weapons? America and Russia. So it's already happening. Some people are now wondering, how could paramilitary have so much weapons against the military of a country? Because when you have terrorists as your leaders, there is a way they will weaken institutions, and they will create alternative institutions that will look alike the main institution. So look at Nigeria. Nigeria that used to send people. Nigeria sent soldiers to Ekomogo. You know Ekomog soldier. Nigeria contributed to that. Bringing peace to troubled African countries. Remember? Now Nigeria has been battling with ragtag, drug-addicted terrorists for over 12 years. Nigeria military have lost quite a sizable number of their own soldiers to these terrorists. I'm talking about thousands of Nigerian soldiers. But whenever they are so close in capturing their controllers, in their leaders, or kind of vaporizing their entire, existence, an order from above will come and tell them to pull back and pull back. Now, you know what happened? Nigeria military is so weak that it is only strong when it's ordered to kill their own citizens. That is when Nigeria military is very strong. Nigeria Secret Police or DSS, they are so blind that they only see if you say something about the people in government in Nigeria. The terrorists are roaming about, collecting ransom. Now, today in Nigeria, the only people who have the capacity to wage a war against Nigerian military, and they will defeat them, to your surprise, they are the Nigerian terrorists, Fulani terrorists, as well as the Boko Haram terrorists, ISWAP terrorists. All these terrorists that are operating in the entire Nigerian space, sponsored by those inside government in Nigeria, and those outside government in Nigeria, and those outside Nigeria, well coordinated. I am not making this up. These guys have land-to-air rockets, anti-aircraft rockets, that it made the news that instead of Nigeria intelligence to retrieve that from them, Nigerian government offered them money to buy the weapon back from them. So if I tell you that the people who have the capacity to wage war, these guys took over military bases in Nigeria. Soldiers ran away. Have you forgotten? Terrorists invaded different military and they carted away military weapons in Nigeria where soldiers ran away. Have you forgotten? Who dare do that in Nigeria? Who can do that? Which group can do that in Nigeria successfully? Which group has tried that ever in Nigeria? They broke into prison and they broke out their members. Do you get that? The only people who can wage war against military in Nigeria, and they can force Nigerian government to a ceasefire, an agreement, an arrangement, including power sharing, is only in Nigeria. Do you see how we are so next to Sudan as a people? The institutions that could have protected Nigerians, they are weakened intentionally. Today, Yala is going about asking governments across Nigeria, southern Nigeria, to allow them to provide vigilante security against Fulani terrorists who are invading and kidnapping people in southern Nigeria. Can you believe that? You better believe it. Because we have gotten to a stage where we now have spokespersons for terrorists in Nigeria. And they do this with ease, calm, and all that. So how long do you think it's going to take? I'm saying these are people who have now brought Nigeria to a state where terrorists are being given red carpets to different government houses. I'm not joking. So when I was watching that of Sudan, Nigeria was on my mind. And here is why. Sorry about that, Blinken. It will never stop. In Nigeria, a lot of things that people never believed could happen have happened. I'm talking about seeing terrorists, real-time terrorists, right, being given this kind of VIP treatment. Okay? When APC, Egbekegbe, took government in Nigeria, it was when Boko Haram was always in the news. And they said that a serious government should be able to end terrorism in 3 months. Do you know what they did? There was no prosecution of terrorists. Those who were being prosecuted at the time suddenly got forgotten or secretly released because they repented. The Nigerian government, under this APC, Egbekegbe, behind the scene, they were doing something called Operation Safe Corridor. How could you give a safe corridor to terrorists? What about their victims? What happened to them? And all that questions were kind of popping up at the time. But they didn't give a damn. I mean, it got to a stage whereby they were actually showing us terrorists graduating. Oh, these ones, repentant terrorists, have graduated. Really? How? Then they showed us some times ago where repentant terrorists were protesting that everything they promised them, they didn't give them. I'll be back. I've got a blinking screen. I don't like that. And I think a lot of you probably don't hear that, okay? Don't go anywhere. I will be back in a sec. Let me put something up. One moment. Anyway, I just had to take that break and fix this, and so that I can stop blinking, okay? So yeah, here is the reality. Can Nigeria ever get to that stage? Of course, yes. Today, some people are hell-bent on promoting divisive rhetoric because according to them, it serves their interest to get closer to power. Selfishness, self-centeredness, and all that. And then short-sightedness. Right? Nigeria is wrongly joined together. And because of the poor leadership, corruption, and everything associated with Nigeria today, these have given birth to different agitation and demands that something needs to change in this structural arrangement of called Nigeria. There's been so much mismatch in Nigeria where they have a constitution, supposedly Nigeria constitution. In other part of Nigeria, they have Sharia constitution that they strongly believe is much more powerful than Nigerian constitution. And that, a belief system, is in contrast to a supposed country called Nigeria that should be, what do they call that thing again? They have a word for it. I'm going to find that word. But you know, when you have the mixture of almost everything, something that is not mono, and you say, oh yeah, these ones are the majority. No. It is like the mixture of everything. How could you have a law in a separate part of the country that is strictly about religion in a country, right, that is multi-religious? That's contrast, isn't it? Okay. So a lot of people didn't feel that. Now, to let you know the damages and division this is actually representing, that when you put two wrong people together, not to talk of putting 3, 4, or 250 different people together, or from different backgrounds, and then you want them to coexist, they also have different languages. Oh. Now, in one Nigeria, right, if you're a businessman, as a Nigerian, you think, well, as a Nigerian, you can be anywhere. No, you can't. There are some certain businesses that you can't take to some part of Nigeria. You will never be covered by Nigerian law. Your citizenship is 0 in that part of Nigeria. And there are many of them who have continually, publicly, thumb on the chest, saying, this is who they are. And if you don't agree with that, then you can go to hell. You know what I mean? Using religion, especially the Sharia North. Now, because of the failure of government in Nigeria, right? People are now beginning to speak up that, no, listen. If people want to be fanatic, Islamic, Sharia, and the rest of that, they can be. In fact, there are actually about 12 states in northern Nigeria that somehow, they have been able to make laws that covers that religious part, okay? But on the larger part, they are calling the rest of Nigeria infidels. Now, that is unacceptable. Now, if we all have to sit down and have a conversation, I bet they will have a choice of having to move somewhere else or probably be on their own too. So because Nigeria has failed, and because the likes of APC, who brought this jihadism, fanaticism, and this religious ethnicism and the rest of that into Nigeria, divided Nigeria more. Since they have done what we've all witnessed so far, yeah, today, you can count on your hands how many people how many countries people are already envisaging will come out of Nigeria. But let us use the Sudan playbook here. Context. Sudan, a big country, mostly Christians, Muslim, and then traditionalist South. And the hypocritical, what do you call it? Corrupt, power mongers, and murderers, terrorists, who took over power in the north. And then they decided to take everybody's power as well from the entire country and take everything to themselves, with the hope that they are uniting the country as one Sudan, but that didn't work. So they created unrest, crisis, killings, and the rest of that in that part of the country when they were together, all because of their resources. There were those who were part of South Sudan too, who were benefiting from the entire Sudan, and they are speaking on behalf of these criminals, Omar Albashir, for example. Just the same way you have Nigerians who are Southerners today, who are witnessing all of this destruction, but yet, because they are benefiting from it, they will tell you, it go better. You don't understand how things work. Now, some people don't understand politics. Some people need to build bridges. Some people need to build their canal. Some people need to build their skyscraper. And all the nonsense they are telling you because they are benefiting from it. There's going to be a day Nigeria is going to break up. Look at me very well. Nigeria is going to break up. And it is not because whether you want it or you don't want it. Okay? Because in everything, there will be people who want and people who don't. But actions, they say, speak louder than voice. There are many of them who are telling you that they don't want Nigeria to break. But everything and every of their action is leading towards the breakup of Nigeria. Nigerians are more divided than ever. Nigerians are poorer than ever. Nigeria is more corrupt than ever. Now, add terrorism to it, okay? And then the impunity that you see every day. So it's not you, okay? It's not you that want Nigeria to break or don't want Nigeria to break that will decide that. They will push you into reaching that decision too, because you will see that there will be no other decision, there will be no other choice. After exploring all other choices you've created, that will come to nothing. They will do it, just like they did in Sudan. That they were impoverishing the South Sudan, taking their resources and destroying them politically and all that, right? Didn't mean that they were developing their own people with love as well. Because he who has no love can't give love. If you don't have love, you can't give it. Okay? If any criminals who says they love Nigeria, they want to end, for example, Bokwari who said he loves Nigeria, he wants to fix Nigeria, okay? Just look at his backyard, look at his homestead. He doesn't have anything to offer them, not to talk of to offer the rest of Nigeria. It's always there. I mean, it's always there. When you don't have love, you can't give love. You can pretend that you love, but it's obvious that your actions are going to be showing something else. That's exactly what happened in Sudan. Yes, the people in northern Sudan or people who are the upper side controlling the government, they are people controlling the government. They felt like, I mean, they were better off. The South Sudanese are corrupt. They are shouting about their resources, but their leaders are corrupt and all those allegations. And the endless crisis there. But when it finally ended, when the whole thing finally ended and South Sudan broke away completely from the rest of Sudan, they had nobody to blame for why they are hateful. I'm not talking about the Sudanese. I'm talking about the criminals who took over your government in Sudan. Okay? They felt like, well, at this time, the usual scapegoats, the usual people we blame for the reason why Sudan is having problems, now they have left. So what is left? Ourselves. So they turned on themselves. They turned on the people that they once pretended to love. Terrorists that they were using turned on their people. Now look at Nigeria. In Nigeria today, terrorists are protected more than the citizens. Terrorists have more rights than citizens in Nigeria. I could go to jail for talking about the terrorists in Nigeria and what they are doing than for a terrorist who actually boasts that he did it. He killed the people. He kidnapped them, right? For him to, in fact, get invited or arrested. Because I will be considered as somebody who is inciting people because I am talking about the crisis and I'm talking about the victims. But you see the terrorist, it will be considered as somebody that must be handled with care. Watch what you say about him so that you don't upset him, or you don't let people get angry and realize that the government is actually sponsoring them. Things like that is how Nigeria works right now. But you know why? In Nigeria today, not the entire South, though, the Southeasterners, the Igbos in Nigeria, you can kind of equate them partially this time to South Sudanese. They have corrupt criminals, corrupt politicians who are benefiting from Nigeria, and they would rather die than let and see them break away from Nigeria. So these are the enemies within that will never want Biafra to come, because if Biafra should come, they will have no place there. Do you understand that? So like South Sudanese. But at the end of the day, what happened? In Nigeria today, if you look around and you don't understand what is wrong with Nigeria, for example, if you pretend to be confused, right? The easy thing to do is to blame an Igbo man or blame the Igbos. Yeah, that's how to do it in Nigeria. The Igbos are supposed to be seen why Nigeria can't conduct elections. Okay? The Igbos are to be seen as the reason why the terrorists are not slowing down, the Boko Haram and the rest, because the Igbos are telling the world, the terrorists, the Igbos won't stop talking. So the Igbos are the reasons why your economy is in red. The Igbos are the reasons why the looters under Boko Haram are getting away with the crime. Just blame them. Now, if you can't blame them, you can just blame their reactions to everything. Why are they always complaining? They are the people who always complain about Nigeria. Say the other country no get problem ni. That's Nigerian culture. In case if you don't know, I'm a Yoruba man, by the way, and I'm actually telling you this because a lot of you have found so many reasons to look for somebody to blame. And when it comes to Nigeria, just blame the Igbos. They are always complaining. Every time they are always every time they are always crying like they are the victims. That's what they were doing in Sudan. Look at us, these South Sudanese, ungrateful fellow. Look at them. How many are they? How many are they? What are they? Look at their number. Every time screaming. They can't even govern themselves. That's what they were telling the South Sudanese. Why they were looting them, stealing from them, and impoverishing their people. They blamed them. They said they were always crying victims. What's the resources? Do you know the gold that we have in Dafur? Do you know the gold that we have in Khartoum? Do you know the gold that we have in, they were saying that. Even though they had no access to those gold, the gold and all of those resources were being controlled by terrorists. These are the common, like ordinary citizens of these ordinary Sudanese now, trying to berate the South Sudanese. They blame the people of the South for their problems. They said they were crying too much. Every day they want to go. If I let them go, useless and all of that. That's exactly what you have in Nigeria. The moment the South Sudanese left, South Sudan didn't turn to paradise. So don't get me wrong. Sure you get now. But the problem of South Sudanese became the problem of South Sudanese themselves. Now, they can't blame anybody anymore. They can't blame the North for taking over their resources anymore. So their destiny is now in their hands. As they are battling with their own destiny, new catastrophe broke out in the North. So look at Nigeria today. The southern part of Nigeria, feeds the rest of Nigeria. Somebody said that is debatable. I know it's debatable. But let's use the numbers here. Okay? Every part of Nigeria, to my own understanding, right, can grow their own food if they were well managed. So, the northern part of Nigeria grows their food in large quantities, but they can't eat them. They will be lost. I mean, they'll be running at loss. So they had to move them down south, where the consumers are willing and ready to pay any price. Trade between the north and the south, that should be normal regulars, Abi. Contribution of trade, Abi. But the southern Nigeria, or should I say Nigeria generally, has a culture of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Do you get that? And that is, they call it consolidated revenue. Consolidated revenue means everybody must contribute what they have into the general pot. So we will now mix everything together, and then we will now share this back to everybody. Northern Nigeria has 19 states. Southern Nigeria has 17 states. So from this divide, when it comes to contributing into that consolidated revenue pot, the southern Nigeria make substantive contribution that is over 80% of what goes into that pot. The northern Nigeria makes a paltry 20%. Now, when it comes to sharing, this is where robbing Peter to pay Paul comes in. When it comes to sharing, they don't share according to contribution. They share according to population. Since northern Nigeria is considered the biggest, with the biggest population, and the one making the smallest and the tiniest contribution to the general pot, by the standard of population, they have to take the chunk of that contribution. How do you have biggest number, biggest population, and you have very tiny lowest tax contribution? Have you asked yourselves? Northern Nigeria has millions of people that they use for election and sharing formula, but this same huge number of people are not contributing any real tax into the general purse according to their number. Does that make any sense to you at all? Southern Nigeria, that is allocated smaller population, is making the hugest contribution into this general pot, and when they share it, it is called robbing Peter to pay Paul. Does that make any sense? That is Nigeria context. So the moment the southern Nigeria breaks out of Nigeria, the problem of southern Nigeria, the criminals therein, becomes the problems of the people of the southern Nigeria. What is left of the north then, when there is no longer sharing? You will now realize that most of the places you are seeing terrorists in northern Nigeria, all those places, all those forests, Sambisa and all those places, they are actually places with vast, precious mineral resources. And they are being extracted as we speak now by different conglomerates, America, the West, Russia. God knows, I'm just saying, that you don't know for now. The moment And remember, the Nigeria defense military is controlled by the northern Nigeria. Some even said that there is nothing called Nigeria military. It is called Northern Nigeria Military Force. Somebody said that. So when Nigeria break up, the northern Nigeria will inherit the military. Sure you get? But the terrorists that they are sponsoring right now, they would have become so rich that the resources that the northern Nigeria should normally get back to, the oil, the gold, the every other resources there, they will now realize that they are now being controlled by the terrorists that they have allowed to freely move weapons, to freely attack military bases, to freely cut away weapons of Nigerian weapons. So they will now realize that those ones they are now controlling the resources that northern Nigeria could possibly use to develop. So do you see why they say Nigeria shouldn't break now? I'm just giving you an insight using Chad. Using Sudan and Nigeria. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Are you with me? It will happen. Not because you want it or you don't want it. I am talking about criminals whose actions, for selfish reasons, remember the terrorists during this Bokwari's government, they said Bokwari invited them to Nigeria and abandoned them. They said APC promised them that if they gain power, that they will give them job. Now APC abandoned them. That is why they resorted into kidnapping and further terrorism. Fulani terrorists. They said that on camera. Go to BBC and go and listen to that. They bragged about it and nothing will happen, they said. So when Nigeria finally break, people will deal with the Janjaweed terrorists in Nigeria. So you know what will happen to northern Nigeria? The Middle Belt right now are already saying they are not part of northern Nigeria. The people of the Middle Belt. Yes, they said they are not part of northern Nigeria. They are Middle Beltans. They are not Sharia. They are not what these things that these fanatics are pushing. Now, if what I am saying to you doesn't make any sense yet, I advise you to read up, okay? It's important you read up. Because I'll give you a scenario. In Zamfara, Zamfara is also a small state, mostly mostly agrarian states, where the people are mainly farmers. I'm talking about farmers. They are not cattle, so farmers who grow their own food. But when APC Egbekegbe came in, suddenly, the Fulani terrorists, they took over that state. They started they started killing farmers on their farms. They started chasing people away from their different communities. It didn't take long before we realized that they were actually after gold. Zamfara gold. Do you know what happened? After chasing people away from their lands, killing those they could kill, and they took over the land, they started the illegal mining. Do you know who actually first celebrated the gold? The governor of Zamfara State. He actually did a press conference where he said Zamfara is now gold producer. That Zamfara gold will now be warehoused in UAE, in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Matawale. He said Zamfara gold is for Zamfara people. So if the government wanted the Zamfara gold, why did they have to sponsor terrorists to kill their own people, chase them off the land to extract the gold? So by the time Nigeria break up, and northern Nigeria, the 12 states of northern Nigeria, 12, now go be 12. The Middle Belt are not going to be part of Arewa Republic. The debate is already on. They said them being misled, them being used as a buffer by these terrorists has ended. They are not part of the northern Nigeria. They are indeed the Middle Beltans. That battle is raging right now. So when the whole thing finally pafuka, pow, 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 they will now realize that the leaders of ISWAP, leaders of different terrorist groups, they will become the general in Arewa Army, Nigeria Army. Or they will have to create a paramilitary for them, like you have the Miyetti Allah, that is speaking for the terrorists. They will probably just kind of legitimize them and bring their leader as a general, the general of Kineko forces. So if they say, I know is never going to happen all over Nigeria, it will rather lead Nigeria to civil war. I promise you that. Yeah, it won't happen that much. But when Nigeria finally break, all of you who are currently northerners, who are propagating this an infidel will never lead you, and this one will never be that, and all this, that you even made Okorocha. I remember when you made Okorocha to start speaking Arabic. A day is coming. You will not see the likes of Okorocha to impress you. You will not see the likes of Oplesus Odigba to impress you. You will not see the likes of Tifnumbu to impress you. There will be no southerner to impress you like this guy.
Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam acknowledge the fact that in Quran chapter 16 verse 90 it says, Inna Allah Yagmur Bil Adil wa Ihi, saying, verily God commands justice and fairness.
They will not be there to speak like that to impress you. After all that, now zero the guy ghetto for APC primaries. I'm only saying this so that you can kind of probably reflect. Do some kind of reflection, right? Because the truth here is this. The criminals from southern Nigeria, they are using one Nigeria to escape justice. Okay? The terrorists from northern Nigeria, your leaders, they are using one Nigeria to escape justice as well. Okay? To hide what they are doing to you. When Nigeria no longer exists, when there is no longer one Nigeria, they will have nowhere to hide anymore. They would have you and the terrorists they have been paying, sponsoring, and protecting from justice. They will have them and you to deal with. So Sudan can begin to make sense to you then. And kind of, sadly, Nigerians, these northerners, Sudan is like their London. I don't know if some of you know that. If you see some of these guys who want to go for terrorist training, all this jihadist cell camp, they will go to Sudan, they will go to Libya, they will go to Iran, they will go to Saudi Arabia, they will go to places where they can get mentored, depends on whatever mission they want to set them up for. So now, the failed Nigerian government, with the students, those who are like students in Sudan, after this bombing, shooting, killing, 430 people have been confirmed killed. That's not even up to the people killed in Benue in 3 days. Remember? Sorry, in 1 week, rather. In 1 week. In Kaduna, they said in 6 months, they have killed over 1,400 people in southern Kaduna alone, officially. But in Khartoum, right now, Nigerian government first said that there's nothing they can do to evacuate Nigerians from Sudan. Yes. Then when people started batching them, are you mad? What do you mean? Yeah. They now say, okay, they have set up committee that will bring people from Sudan. They are now begging Bukwari to call the two generals, that they should talk. Maybe they should cease fire. They should beg them. They should do this and that. But remember the genesis. They will never stop killing or fighting themselves until what? until probably the two guys and the rest of those behind them, until they no longer have access to that power. You see that rebel leader, the Janjaweed leader, he has upper hand, let's be honest. But because it's also a proxy war too, Russia is backing him with head. Russia is supplying him weapons as well. And he is paying Russia in gold. So it means, like, you know, I currently have access to unlimited abundance natural resources to pay for any weapon for as long as he wants. And remember, that's what they have been doing. Janjaweed, in that part of Africa, they have been killing civilians. They have been using civilians as human shield. When the war rages or anything, they use them as shield. They have committed different worst kind of terrorism. That their leader is number 2 man, or almost the leader of Sudan, tells a lot about you know, what befell Sudan. So Nigeria is not far from it. And I think you should have that at the back of your mind too. So here we are in Nigeria, in Southern Kaduna, where they are carrying out, you know, ethnic cleansing, you call it, religiously backed and all that. Okay? So the people of Southern Kaduna are now demanding for either they should cut them off Kaduna entirely. All of these killings and all that, right? Towards what end? Towards some people having to be in control. Now, being in control, sometimes, you know, it's like winning the war and losing the battle. So APC, that is very fond of violence and everything, trying to get whatever they want, or whatever they wanted, they will get that, right? They kind of feel so good and give themselves a trophy for winning the war. But the country they want to govern is in tatters, right? So they have to create an alternative, a lie, to make it look like it's not happening. Like I told you, you don't have to ask for it. Even whether you asked for it or you didn't ask for it, it's going to happen. No country will survive when you have rogues and criminals who are so blinded by ambition and power, greed, that they will play any card. And it doesn't matter as long as they get the power. So put these two countries aside. Use all the context I've shared with you. And then, you know, make up your mind on what is the future of Nigeria. I'll keep the rest for tonight when I see everybody later tonight. So like I said, I am currently on TikTok. And thank you very much for joining me on TikTok, by the way. It's brilliant. So guys, we will see you again tonight.
Mayegun làwa mọ̀ làmọ̀ tó dòdòdò.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Mayegun làwa mọ̀ làmọ̀ tó dòdòdò.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Mayegun ti dé o, ọ̀rẹ́ ará ìlú.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Lórí Facebook, lórí YouTube.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Gbogbo bó ṣe ń lọ ni Mayegun já wa sí.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Àṣírí ọ̀jẹ̀lú kì í bò níbẹ̀ o.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Bó bá ṣe eré, àní Mayegun máa wí.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Ó sì tún ṣe eré, wàá gbọ́ níbẹ̀ o.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Mayegun Diary, Diary Politico.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Godfatherism kò sí lọ́rọ̀ Mayegun.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Ẹ farabalẹ̀ sẹ́ o, kẹgọ́rọ̀ lẹ́nu o.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Àní Mayegun làwa mọ̀ tó dòdòdò.
Mayegun Diary, Nayibi #1.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì
Máyégún ti dé. Máyégún ti dé.
Ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Lórí Facebook.
Máyégún ti dé.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Lórí YouTube.
Máyégún ti dé.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Bọ́ba bá gbé wúrẹ́.
Máyégún máa wí.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Ijó ìgbádìyẹ.
Máyégún máa wí.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Presido bá rúfin o.
Máyégún máa wí.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Kí gómìnà kówó jẹ.
Máyégún máa wí.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Ọlọ́pàá tí ń darí bá.
Máyégún máa wí.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Aṣòfin tí ń rúfin o.
Máyégún máa wí.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Òpùrọ́ olóṣèlú.
Máyégún máa wí.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Àní ẹ̀sùn ràkì.
Máyégún ti dé.
Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe èyí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dèrò ní fi wọ́n níran o.
Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe èyí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dẹ̀rọ̀ ò ní fi wọ́n níran.
Wọ́n fowó bẹ́ẹ̀ o, Máyégún ó sọ pé wọ́n ò fẹ́ bẹ̀. Wọ́n fowó bẹ́ẹ̀, Máyégún ó sọ pé wọ́n ò fẹ́ bẹ̀. Oníkanṣá ti ṣe èyí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, fáwọn ará ìlú tó gbé wọn débẹ̀ o. Àyè.
Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe yìí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dẹ̀rọ̀ ò ní fi wọ́n níran.
Ha! Kì máa yí ṣeré, ọ̀rọ̀ yìí kì í ṣẹ̀fẹ̀. Kì máa yí ṣeré, ọ̀rọ̀ yìí kì í ṣẹ̀fẹ̀. Ẹni bá ti lè lẹ́bọ̀ lẹ́rù o, ọmọ bá dèrò kàṣàyè tú wọn síta.
Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe yìí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dẹ̀rọ̀ ò ní fi wọ́n níran.
Tẹnitẹni ọmọ Máyégún ọ̀rẹ́ ara ìlú mọ̀mọ́ ni mo fọlọ́hún ṣọ́ ẹ̀ bá kìlẹ́bù. Lóòótọ́ olódodo ìlú ọ̀tá ìlú mọ̀mọ́ ni ìwọ ṣá máa ń ṣọ́ra kò sì mọ́ bẹ̀rù. Bọ́tà ń lè rí bóníṣègùn lé káwọn mọ̀mọ́ fi ṣera wọn ni ó ti dẹrùn tí wọn ò gbọ́dọ̀ sì mọ́ bẹ̀. Èèpo ọ̀bọ lọmọ bá dérò tàjẹ́ ò gbọ́dọ̀ jẹ́, ó ti dọba lórí àbínú ẹni kò sì mọ́ fòyà. Àìsíwọ́lu ní ẹnìkẹ́ ìgbódì ẹyin lábàrá o, ó kó ẹni tó bá dán o àkàmù. Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì o. Ẹni bá ti ṣe èyí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dèrò òní fi wọ́n níran o.
Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Máyégún ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn ràkì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe yìí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dẹ̀rọ̀ ò ní fi wọ́n níran.